From a daughter initially disowned and raised in poverty, to another who felt like her father's mascot rather than his child, Mick Jagger's children have endured shocking paternity battles, tragic losses, family estrangement, and the crushing weight of living in the shadow of rock's most notorious womanizer. While the world knows his music, few realize the emotional devastation some of his children have faced behind closed doors. Here's what really happened to Mick Jagger's children. Karis Hunt Jagger. Karis Hunt Jagger's story begins with one of the most shocking acts of parental rejection in rock and roll history. In 1970, when Mick Jagger's affair with American actress and singer Marsha Hunt resulted in pregnancy, the Rolling Stones frontman made a decision that would haunt his family for decades. He disowned his first child before she was even born. Marsha Hunt had met Mick Jagger in 1969 when the Rolling Stones asked her to pose for an advertisement for their single Honky Tonk Women. Hunt refused the offer, but Jagger pursued her relentlessly, eventually starting a relationship despite being involved with Marianne Faithfull at the time. When Hunt became pregnant in 1970, Jagger was already moving on to his next relationship with Bianca Perez Mora Macias, whom he would marry just months after Karis was born. The cruelty of Jagger's abandonment became clear immediately after Karis's birth on November 4, 1970. Hunt was alone during delivery, and Jagger visited his daughter and her mother only once, a couple of days later. Even worse, Jagger's lawyers forced Hunt to sign papers stating that he was not the father, despite Jagger privately acknowledging that Karis was his child. As his then-girlfriend Catherine James later revealed, "I don't know why Mick did that, because he told me at the time that Karis was his child." What followed was a devastating 8-year legal battle that left Hunt and her daughter struggling in poverty. While Jagger was earning millions from Rolling Stones tours and albums, Hunt received a measly $17 per week in child support. The financial strain became so severe that Hunt was forced to go on welfare in 1978, appearing at the Los Angeles County Welfare Office just to feed her daughter. Hunt had to spend a fortune just trying to locate Jagger around the world to serve legal papers, calling France, China, and wherever the Rolling Stones were touring. The paternity battle reached its peak in 1979, when Hunt filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles seeking $2,190 per month in child support. During the court proceedings, Jagger's California concert earnings were actually held pending the outcome of the case. Hunt explained her motivation simply, "I wanted only to be able to say to my daughter, when she's 21, that I didn't allow her father to neglect his responsibilities." Throughout this ordeal, Hunt made sure Karis knew who her father was. When Rolling Stones songs came on the radio, Hunt would tell her young daughter, "That's your daddy?" Hunt refused to let Jagger's rejection define their lives, maintaining her dignity even as she faced social ostracism for suing one of the world's biggest rock stars. The most remarkable part of this story came decades later. When Karis turned 12 years old in 1982, Jagger suddenly decided it was time to know his daughter. This change of heart was largely influenced by Jerry Hall, who regularly invited Karis to family gatherings and made sure all of Jagger's children spent summers together. As Hunt later reflected, he had to step down from a pedestal and say, "Yes, I'm her dad. Come home with me," when he had publicly said something else. The healing between father and daughter grew stronger over the years. Jagger attended Karis's Yale University graduation in 1992, walked her down the aisle at her wedding in 2000, and was present when her children were born. But perhaps the most telling moment came in 2014, when Jagger's longtime girlfriend Loren Scott tragically died by suicide. In his darkest hour, Jagger flew straight to Los Angeles to stay with Karis, and she organized Scott's funeral and supported him throughout the grieving process. As one source close to Jagger revealed, Mick feels safe with her. She's never judged him, even though, God knows, He's given her reason to. Jade Jagger. Jade Jagger's childhood reveals one of the most emotionally damaging aspects of growing up as a rock star's child, as she later confessed that she wasn't a daughter, but rather served as her father's mascot throughout her formative years. Born on October 21, 1971, just 5 months after her parents, Mick Jagger and Bianca Jagger, married in Saint-Tropez, Jade entered a world where her role as a child became secondary to her function as an accessory in her parents' glamorous but emotionally distant lives. The reality of Jade's upbringing was far removed from the fairy tale that the public might have imagined. Her parents' marriage was already troubled from the start, with both Mick and Bianca engaging in affairs and living increasingly separate lives. While Mick toured the world with the Rolling Stones or pursued relationships with other women, Bianca was building her own career as a socialite and human rights activist, frequently traveling between New York's Studio 54 scene and international capitals. Jade found herself caught between these two worlds, more often treated as a prop for photo opportunities than as a child needing stability and attention. Jade's sense of displacement became particularly acute when her father decided she needed a proper English education and sent her to boarding school in Britain, despite the fact that she had been thriving academically at the exclusive Spence School in Manhattan. This decision would prove disastrous for the young girl who was already struggling with her identity and place in the family. The transition from New York to the rigid structure of British boarding school created a rebellion that would define her teenage years. The pressures of living up to her parents' larger-than-life personas, combined with the emotional neglect she experienced, led Jade down a destructive path during her adolescence. She was eventually expelled from school, marking the beginning of a pattern of acting out that included experimenting with drugs and alcohol at an early age. As Jade later reflected in interviews, she felt somewhat like a mascot during her childhood, explaining that, "I was the only child in a world dominated by adult concerns and celebrity obligations." The damage to Jade's relationship with both parents became evident as she entered her teenage years. Her mother, Bianca, despite winning custody after the divorce in 1978, was often absent, pursuing her own career and activism. Meanwhile, Mick's approach to parenting seemed to revolve around creating photo opportunities and public appearances rather than providing genuine emotional support. Jade found herself shuttled between her parents' various homes and social circles, never quite belonging fully to either world. During one particularly revealing interview, Jade spoke candidly about the psychological impact of her upbringing, describing how she had felt forced into a lifestyle that prioritized image over authentic relationships. She admitted to struggling with boyfriends her father didn't approve of and feeling pressure to maintain the family's public image even when her personal life was falling apart. The constant scrutiny and expectations placed on her as a Jagger child created lasting emotional scars that would take years to heal. Despite these early struggles, Jade eventually channeled her experiences into building a successful career as a jewelry designer, founding Jade Incorporated in 1996, and later serving as creative director for the prestigious Garrard Company. Her professional success, however, came only after years of working through the trauma of feeling like an ornament in her parents' lives rather than a beloved daughter. Her journey from troubled teenager to accomplished businesswoman represents a remarkable transformation, though one born from the necessity of creating her own identity separate from the Jagger family brand. Elizabeth "Lizzie" Jagger. Elizabeth Jagger's journey from tabloid scandal to serious political activist represents one of the most dramatic transformations among Mick Jagger's children. Born on March 2, 1984, Elizabeth grew up as the eldest daughter of Mick Jagger and supermodel Jerry Hall, thrust into the spotlight from birth, but ultimately finding her voice through both public embarrassment and personal conviction. The defining moment that would both humiliate and ultimately motivate Elizabeth came in 2005, when she was 21 years old. After spending an evening partying at a West London nightclub, Elizabeth and her then-boyfriend Callum Best, son of football legend George Best, were caught on closed-circuit television cameras, engaging in intimate relations on the fire escape steps of the venue. The couple had made what they thought was a private exit from the club, seeking privacy away from the crowded interior, but their 10-minute encounter was captured by security cameras, and the footage quickly made its way to British tabloids. The scandal erupted across British newspapers the following week, with the grainy but unmistakable images plastered on front pages and inside spreads of major publications. For Elizabeth, who had already begun establishing herself as a model and actress, the incident represented a crushing invasion of privacy that highlighted the impossible scrutiny faced by children of celebrities. The relationship with Callum Best lasted only about a month after the incident, with both agreeing to remain friends, but the damage to Elizabeth's public image seemed significant at the time. Rather than retreating from public life, Elizabeth chose to channel her experiences with media exploitation and gender-based scrutiny into meaningful activism. Her modeling career, which had begun in 1998 when she walked for Thierry Mugler alongside her mother, continued to flourish with campaigns for major brands, including Lancôme, Tommy Hilfiger, and Mango. However, Elizabeth began using her platform to advocate for women's rights and gender equality, drawing from her personal understanding of how women in the public eye face different standards and treatment than men. Elizabeth's most significant achievement came in 2018, when she successfully lobbied for the Equal Rights Amendment to pass in Illinois. Her work on this landmark legislation demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of constitutional law and political strategy that surprised many who knew her primarily through her modeling career or the tabloid incident from her youth. Elizabeth had spent considerable time studying equal rights law and building relationships with lawmakers, approaching the issue with the same dedication she had shown in her professional career. The Equal Rights Amendment, which seeks to guarantee equal legal rights for all American citizens, regardless of sex, had been stalled in various state legislatures for decades. Elizabeth's involvement in the Illinois campaign represented a personal mission rooted in her experiences as a woman who had faced public judgment and scrutiny that her male counterparts rarely encountered. Her advocacy work extended beyond just lobbying efforts, as she organized events, spoke at rallies, and used her social media presence to educate her followers about the importance of constitutional protections for women's rights. Elizabeth married Christopher Bailau, and they have a son named Eugene together, creating a family life that remains largely private despite her continued public advocacy work. Her transformation from a young woman caught in an embarrassing tabloid scandal to a serious political activist working on constitutional issues demonstrates remarkable personal growth and a commitment to using her experiences to benefit other women facing similar challenges in their own lives. James Jagger. James Jagger's story is one of a talented young man desperately searching for his own identity while carrying the overwhelming burden of one of the most famous surnames in rock and roll history. Born on August 28, 1985, James spent years struggling to find his niche across multiple creative fields, only to discover that his famous last name felt more like a curse than a blessing in his pursuit of artistic success. Unlike many celebrity children who embrace a single career path, James threw himself into an remarkably diverse range of creative pursuits that demonstrated both his artistic ambition and his restless search for purpose. He dabbled extensively in modeling, appearing in high-profile campaigns for prestigious brands, including Tommy Hilfiger, Pepe Jeans, and Burberry, and made his catwalk debut for British designer Kim Jones in 2004. Despite his natural charisma and striking resemblance to his father, modeling never felt like more than a temporary diversion for James. His literary ambitions led him to write a complete novella centered around an opium dealer during the Industrial Revolution. a dark and complex work that showcased his intellectual depth, but never found a publisher. James also worked on a screenplay set during the Korean War, demonstrating his interest in historical drama and his desire to tell serious stories that went far beyond the typical celebrity offspring projects. These unpublished works represented hours of solitary creative effort that few people ever saw, adding to his growing frustration with trying to establish himself as an artist. Music seemed like the most natural path for James, given his father's legendary career. But even here, he chose to forge his own direction by forming Turbogeist, a four-piece garage punk band that deliberately moved away from the blues-influenced rock that made his father famous. With James on vocals and guitar, childhood friend Louis Felber on guitar and backup vocals, Josh Ludlow on drums, and James Dunson on bass, Turbogeist developed a sound rooted in 80s punk and 90s alternative rock. Drawing inspiration from bands like The Replacements, Roky Erickson, and Pantera, rather than the Rolling Stones' musical influences. The band packed small clubs across London and worked tirelessly to gain attention from producers and record label representatives on both sides of the Atlantic. But James discovered that his famous surname created unexpected obstacles rather than opportunities. As he later revealed, the Jagger name felt like a curse during his early Hollywood career, with industry professionals either dismissing him as a nepotism case or placing impossible expectations on him to live up to his father's legacy. This frustration nearly drove James away from the entertainment industry entirely, as he grew tired of being judged not on his own merits, but on his family connections. The irony of James's breakthrough came when he landed the role of Kip Stevens, the heroin-addicted lead singer of fictional punk band The Nasty Bits, in HBO's Vinyl, a music industry drama set in 1970s New York. The show was co-created by Martin Scorsese, Terrence Winter, and his own father, Mick Jagger, meaning that James's career-defining role came through the very family connection he had spent years trying to escape. Despite this contradiction, James threw himself into the role with intensity. Drawing on his own experiences with punk music and his understanding of the self-destructive tendencies that can plague musicians, creating a performance that proved he could succeed on his own artistic terms, even within his father's sphere of influence. Georgia May Jagger. Georgia May Jagger's modeling career has been marked by a paradox that few people would expect from someone born into fashion royalty. Despite becoming one of Britain's most successful models, she has battled severe insecurity and self-doubt that manifested in dramatic physical symptoms during her early runway appearances. Born on January 12, 1992, to Mick Jagger and supermodel Jerry Hall, Georgia inherited her mother's striking looks and her father's charisma, yet struggled profoundly with believing in her own beauty and worth in an industry built on physical perfection. The most shocking revelation about Georgia's early career came when she admitted to experiencing complete blackouts while walking the catwalk, a terrifying symptom of the anxiety and pressure she felt performing in front of audiences and cameras. These episodes occurred during some of her most high-profile early shows, meaning that Georgia was literally unconscious during moments that appeared triumphant to outside observers. The blackouts represented the severe disconnect between her public success and private struggles, as she later confessed, "I can be quite insecure and don't always think of myself as beautiful." Georgia's insecurity was compounded by physical challenges that began in childhood and continued to affect her throughout her modeling career. She suffered from sensitive skin and eczema from an early age, conditions that created particular difficulties in an industry where flawless skin is often considered essential. Every time Georgia experienced breakouts or eczema flare-ups during her teenage years, she found it extremely difficult to find appropriate skincare products that wouldn't make her condition worse or overcomplicate her routine. The irony of being a successful model while struggling with skin problems that made her feel self-conscious created an ongoing source of stress and anxiety. The pressure Georgia felt about aging began surprisingly early in her career, demonstrating how the modeling industry's youth obsession affected even someone barely out of her teens. She has spoken candidly about feeling intense pressure about anti-aging concerns while still in her 20s, explaining that cultural expectations around maintaining youth have shifted dramatically, with people now worried about aging from a much younger age than in previous generations. When Georgia turned 25, she actually thought her modeling career might be over, considering that age really old in modeling terms, though she now recognizes how young 25 actually is. These personal struggles with skin issues and insecurity eventually became the foundation for Georgia's most successful business venture outside of modeling. Her experiences trying to find effective products for sensitive skin led her to develop May Botanicals, a clean skincare line that launched in 2023 after 5 years of development. Every product in the line is dermatologically tested and pregnancy-safe, reflecting Georgia's commitment to creating solutions for people facing the same challenges she experienced throughout her life. Georgia's journey with self-acceptance has been particularly complicated by her famous parentage, as she has had to navigate the impossible expectations that come with being the daughter of two legendary figures in fashion and music. Her mother, Jerry Hall's career as one of the world's most celebrated supermodels created an additional layer of comparison and pressure that affected Georgia's self-perception. Despite achieving remarkable success, including being named Model of the Year by the British Fashion Council in 2009 and walking in the London Olympics closing ceremony in 2012, Georgia continues to work on accepting herself and managing the insecurities that have followed her throughout her career. Gabriel Jagger. Gabriel Jagger has deliberately chosen to live his life as the most private and media-shy of Mick Jagger's 8 children, carving out a successful career in journalism and media that demonstrates his intellectual ambitions while carefully avoiding the celebrity spotlight that has defined his siblings' experiences. Born on December 9, 1997, as the youngest child of Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall, Gabriel has consistently shown more interest in telling other people's stories than becoming the subject of them himself. Gabriel's career path began with formal journalism training at The Times, one of Britain's most prestigious newspapers, which happened to be owned by his stepfather Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul who married his mother Jerry Hall in 2016. While this connection might have appeared to be simple nepotism, Gabriel approached his work with serious dedication and professionalism, learning the fundamentals of reporting, writing, and editorial judgment under the guidance of experienced journalists who treated him as a legitimate trainee rather than a celebrity curiosity. After gaining valuable experience in traditional newspaper journalism, Gabriel decided to launch his own media venture in 2019, creating a digital platform called Why Now that offers articles, videos, and audio content through a monthly subscription model. The platform focuses on what Gabriel describes as personal, powerful, and positive stories, reflecting his belief that media should inspire and uplift, rather than simply report on conflict and controversy. His father, Mick, showed his support for the venture by promoting it on social media, writing, "My son Gabriel Jagger has launched a new website. Find out more about Why Now here, along with the platform's logo." Gabriel's personal life became public attention when he announced his engagement to Swiss socialite Anouk Winzen-Reid in January 2020. The couple had met while Anouk was working on the private Caribbean island of Mustique, where many wealthy families, including the Jaggers, maintain vacation homes. Their engagement announcement followed traditional British upper-class protocol, stating formally that the engagement is announced between Gabriel, son of Jerry Murdoch of Texas, and Mick Jagger of London, and Anouk, daughter of Janine and Andrea Winzen-Reid of Switzerland. The couple's wedding plans became complicated by the global COVID-19 pandemic, forcing them to postpone their ceremony twice, as travel restrictions and social distancing requirements made their original arrangements impossible. They had initially planned to marry on Mustique, where they first met, but the pandemic made international travel and large gatherings impractical for most of 2020 and into 2021. Gabriel and Anouk finally married on July 17, 2021, in a private ceremony held at Rupert Murdoch's £11 million Oxfordshire mansion called Homewood House. The wedding was an intimate affair with only close family and friends in attendance, including Gabriel's parents, Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall, as well as other family members from both sides. The couple released only one official wedding portrait, showing Gabriel in a navy blue suit with a light pink tie, and Anouk in an elegant off-white dress with silver seahorse-shaped earrings, both holding hands and looking lovingly into each other's eyes while standing in the mansion's garden. The image perfectly captured Gabriel's preference for understated elegance and privacy, marking a significant personal milestone, while maintaining the low-key approach to public attention that has characterized his entire adult life. Lucas Maurice Morad Jagger. Lucas Maurice Morad Jagger's arrival into the world on May 18, 1999, triggered one of the most explosive celebrity scandals of the late 1990s, as his birth from Mick Jagger's affair with Brazilian model Luciana Gimenez effectively destroyed Jagger's 23-year relationship with supermodel Jerry Hall and thrust an innocent child into the center of international media attention. Born in New York City, Lucas became the unwitting catalyst for headlines across the globe before he could even speak, with his very existence challenging the stability of one of rock and roll's most famous couples. The scandal began when Luciana Gimenez, a successful Brazilian television host and former model who had worked with prestigious agencies in Paris and appeared in campaigns for major fashion houses, revealed her pregnancy, while Mick was still in his long-term relationship with Jerry Hall. The couple had met during Mick's travels, and their 8-month affair in 1998 resulted in Gimenez's pregnancy, news that she made public in a way that left no room for Jagger to quietly handle the situation privately, as he had with previous relationship complications. Mick's initial response was to demand a paternity test, setting off a 2-year legal battle that played out in courts and newspaper headlines on both sides of the Atlantic. The legal proceedings became particularly contentious as Mick's representatives challenged Gimenez's claims, while she fought for both recognition of her son's paternity and appropriate financial support. During this period, Lucas was growing up in Brazil with his mother, who faced intense scrutiny from international media while trying to establish her son's legal rights and identity. The paternity battle finally concluded in 2001, when DNA tests confirmed what Gimenez had maintained from the beginning. Lucas was indeed Mick Jagger's biological son. The settlement reached between Jagger and Gimenez remained confidential, but it officially established Lucas's place in the Jagger family tree and ensured his financial security. Following the resolution, both parents apparently worked to establish a more cooperative relationship for the sake of their son's well-being. Lucas grew up primarily in Brazil with his mother, developing a close relationship with Brazilian culture while maintaining connections to his famous father's world. As he matured into adulthood, Lucas began building his own social media presence, accumulating more than 400,000 followers on Instagram, where he shares glimpses of his life split between Brazil and international travel. His posts often show him attending music festivals and cultural events, demonstrating the cosmopolitan upbringing that his unique family situation provided. In April 2021, Lucas faced a serious health challenge that he chose to share openly with his substantial social media following. He underwent a tympanomastoidectomy, a complex ear surgery to remove a cholesteatoma, which is an abnormal skin growth that can cause hearing problems and other complications if left untreated. Lucas posted vulnerable photographs from the hospital, showing himself wearing bandages over his ears, sitting in a wheelchair, and dressed in a hospital gown, accompanied by the simple caption, "He's okay." His mother, Luciana, later revealed additional details about the surgery on her own social media, explaining the medical nature of the procedure to concerned followers. The openness with which Lucas shared this difficult experience demonstrated a maturity and authenticity that contrasts sharply with the media circus that surrounded his birth, showing how he has chosen to use his platform to connect genuinely with people rather than simply maintain a celebrity image. Devereaux Octavian Basil Jagger. Devereaux Octavian Basil Jagger represents perhaps the most extraordinary circumstances of any of Mick Jagger's children, as he was born on December 8, 2016, when his father was 73 years old, making him the product of one of the most age-defying celebrity pregnancies in recent memory. His mother, Melanie Hamrick, was 29 at the time of his birth, creating a 44-year age gap between his parents that immediately drew intense media attention and speculation about the future dynamics of this unconventional family arrangement. The announcement of Devereaux's birth came just 1 week after his arrival, when Melanie took to Instagram to share the news with a heartfelt post declaring, "I'm so in love with my baby Devereaux Jagger," and thanking Elizabeth Jagger for the sweet introduction, indicating that Mick's older children had welcomed their newest sibling warmly despite the unusual circumstances. The choice of the name Devereaux, with its French origins and aristocratic associations, reflected the international and sophisticated environment into which he was born. From his earliest years, Devereaux has shown signs of inheriting his father's natural charisma and performance abilities, with several viral moments capturing public attention. In June 2022, when Devereaux was just 6 years old, a video of him dancing emerged that showed him naturally mimicking his father's iconic stage movements with remarkable accuracy for such a young child. The footage demonstrated that despite the vast age difference between father and son, Mick's legendary rhythm and stage presence had somehow transferred to his youngest child through genetics or close observation. Devereaux's upbringing has been notably different from his older siblings, as he is growing up in an era where his father has achieved legendary status rather than simply being a successful rock star. By the time of Devereaux's birth, Mick had already been knighted, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame multiple times, and recognized as one of the greatest performers in music history. This means that Devereaux is experiencing childhood with a father who has transcended celebrity to become a cultural icon, creating unique pressures and opportunities that none of his siblings faced. The most significant challenge that may await Devereaux became apparent in September 2023, when Mick made a public statement to the Wall Street Journal that could dramatically affect his youngest son's future financial security. In discussing his estimated $500 million fortune, Mick declared that, "The children don't need $500 million to live well," suggesting that he has no intention of leaving his full wealth to his 8 children. This philosophy aligns with other wealthy celebrities like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, who believe that excessive inherited wealth can be harmful to children's development and motivation. The implications of this statement are particularly significant for Devereaux, who, as the youngest child, will have the least time to establish his own career and financial independence before potentially inheriting from his father's estate. While his older siblings have had decades to build their own careers and accumulate wealth, Devereaux may face the unique situation of being the child of one of the world's wealthiest entertainers while potentially receiving a relatively modest inheritance, forcing him to create his own path in life without relying on family wealth as a safety net.